As an introduction, we'd like to acknowledge that our mission at Vose Library is to advance learning, inspire curiosity, enrich lives, and promote community. With that in mind, allow me to introduce our guests. In 2000, Elmer and Holly Savage bought their farm on Barrett Hill Road from Elmer's parents. In 2002, they planted 4 varieties of cold hardy wine grapes, 1,000 vines, and thus started Savage Oaks Vineyard and Winery. Over the next 4 years, they continued to plant vines, and in 2005, had their first harvest. Savage Oaks Vineyard and Winery opened their doors with their first vintage consisting of 4 labels in 2006. Since then, the winery has increased production to 17 different styles, with all but 1 estate grown. The winery continues to be a tourist destination offering Maine wines, local products, events, and starting with their first national act in 2016, a summer concert venue. In 2017, they continued their commitment to sustainability by adding a 35 kilowatt solar array to their 1790s barn roof, making them the first winery in Maine to be 100% solar powered. Cold climate grapes are unique and present unique challenges to the grower and winemaker. Holly and Elmer will discuss their pioneering efforts in Maine's grape growing and winemaking history. Without further ado, please help me welcome Holly and Elmer Savage. Hello, Holly and Elmer. Thank you so much for being here tonight.
You're welcome.
And I'm going to stop sharing so you guys can put your screen up.
Thank you for inviting us.
All right.
So just take a moment. All right. Can we
There.
all see that?
Beautiful.
Yeah. All right.
All right.
Okay. I think I'm going to do most of the presenting tonight, and but Holly will be here to chime in and answer questions whenever you have them of her. So we're going to tell you a little bit about our winery and what we've done and how we've done it for the last basically 20 years. It's been 20 years of our life, and it's had its ups and downs, but it's mostly been very exciting and a lot of fun. This first slide talks about one of the things that's really important to us, that the Maine that's on the front of our labels. It says Maine is on the front of our labels because that is where it all begins. And that's just it. Our focus has been always on preserving our farm and pretty much almost entirely producing our wines from fruit that we grow. And if you see Maine on the front of the wine label, you know that at least 85% of those grapes has been grown in the state. When you see that of any place, you know that that's where those grapes came from. And that's an important thing if you're really looking to buy wines that are from fruit of where you think it is. You want to look for that location on the front of the label. And that's really kind of the crux of what we've done over the years. And we did start back in 2002. That's when we planted the first of our grapevines.
Oh, we got stuck again. Sorry, hold on a sec.
Yeah.
Sorry.
There we go. And this is our farm, and we are located on Barrett Hill Road. We're on 95 acres. We goes up all over the side of Barrett Hill, and we bought the property from my parents in 2000. They had purchased the farm in 1985 when my father retired. And then in 2000, Holly and I decided that we wanted to move here. And it was important to us to try to farm here and do something to try to make a living. I had farmed here from 1985 when my parents bought the place, but it was pretty much a hobby farm. And when we moved here, we wanted to try something to make a living. We've had a herd of Celtic Galloway beef cattle all the way from 85 to the present. They're an old Scottish breed. Most people around here are familiar with the Belties. I grew up around Belties. I worked at Aldermere Farm in Rockport all through high school and college, and that's really what I got my introduction to agriculture. And I went to the University of Maine, and I got my degree in agriculture. So farming's kind of been in my blood and Holly's blood.
I grew up in Bodenham. I raised Black Angus, which are very similar to Belties, a Scottish breed, very hardy, and showed them all over New England. So I was familiar with the farming and cattle as well. So that was an easy transition.
And on the right is kind of one of the synergies we have around here. We feed our cows spent brewer's grains from Church's Brewing up in Searsmont, and then we sell the beer that they brew at Threshers. We sell at a lot of our events, so it's kind of a circle.
Cows love the grain.
The brewer's grains are one of the cow favorites. One of the things, when we decided that we wanted to make a living here, one of the impetus for wine was the wild blueberries. A picture on the left is from somewhere in the 40s on this property.
You can see the date of the 1942 on his sweater.
So it's always been a blueberry farm here, and that's one of the resources we had. But the blueberry industry, as probably people are aware, is not the most healthy industry in the world right now. So we were looking for a way to make a value-added product, some way to make our farm profitable. So the blueberries are what we had, and we continue to use them. And on the right, you see a couple of our workers from a few years ago winnowing the berries, and that's we use our blueberries in four different wines.
It's kind of encouraging. Wild blueberry wine was not very well received when we first started making it, but over the years, people have been a little bit more adventurous with their palate, and it's been exciting to see the increased interest in blueberry wine now.
So we thought about blueberry wines, and we thought about the possibility of growing grapes. We got a very good location for doing that. We've got a nice sunny south-facing slope. And so we started looking in the possibility of growing grapes. And this was back in the early 2000s, 2001. We started thinking about this. And Maine's wine industry didn't have a lot of grapes at the time. There's still not a whole lot grown around, but back then there were very few. There were only about 6 wineries around, and only a couple of them grew a few grapes. So we started looking and decided that it might be something possible to do. And the grapes, what people often wonder, what do we grow for grapes? Well, a little bit about grapes. The traditional European varieties are the vinifera grapes, and that's where most wines come from. The Labrusca grapes are grapes like Concord, Niagara, primarily the kind of grapes that have grown around here forever, that grow wild and don't make particularly great wine, but that you can make wine out of them. But they're primarily juice grapes, jelly grapes, things like Concord, Niagara, Catawba. And so, but then on the other end, the wine grapes are the vinifera grapes, and they make a much better wine. But traditionally, they're not grown in a climate like Maine's. It's tough to grow in that colder climate. So in the last 40 or 50 years, grape breeders have developed hybrids between the cold hardiness of the Labrusca varieties with the wine qualities of the vinifera varieties. And they've developed very cold hardy varieties that can grow in the climate that we have, but still give you the wine qualities that people who drink wines prefer. So there's constantly new varieties developed, and they're getting better and better. The first of the hybrids were a step above Labrusca, but they certainly weren't the best quality grapes. And slowly over the years, grape breeders have developed some really nice varieties, and they're constantly coming out with new ones, and they're constantly challenging the colder and colder climates. So there's some over the last 20 years, there's been some really nice varieties growing, and some that are making some really nice wines throughout the northern tier of states, all through New Hampshire, Vermont, all the way over, and a big industry over through Ohio and Wisconsin and Minnesota. So I'm going to take you through a little bit of the season that we do. So coming right up in the next month or so, we'll start doing some pruning. And on the left, you see what the vines look like today. There are no leaves on them, of course. The leaves go off in the fall as soon as the cold weather hits. But there's still a lot of last year's growth on the vine. You can't leave it like that because you will just get exponential growth, and you'll get way too much fruit developing, and they won't ripen. So the idea of pruning is to limit the production and give you the kind of quality that you need. So these they're not the exact same vines, but on the left is before we start pruning, and on the right is what it looks like after we're done pruning. And that's called spur pruning. We have that sort of that T look to it. I don't know if you see the cursor, there's the vertical trunk, and then the left and right arms are called cordons. And then what we do is we leave these little small spurs of wood along the cordons. And depending on the variety, depending on the health of the vine, we leave a certain number of buds along this portion of last year's growth. And we literally count the buds along this cordon. And we'll leave some varieties, we leave as few as, say, 20 buds. Other varieties, we may leave up to about 60 buds. And you can kind of make out where the buds are. They're the little nodes along these shoots, these spurs of last year's growth. So that's what the vineyard will look like after we're done pruning. Is you have a lot of old growth wood, and you'll see little spurs of last year's growth sticking up all along the wire. And all of our vines are attached to the wires, and our rows are about 400 feet long. So you'll look 400 feet down the row, and you'll see basically where one vine ends, the next one begins. So you'll have a whole wire full of fruiting wood, and that's where the growth starts for the year. It's kind of very simplistic talk about pruning, but there are a number of ways to prune. A couple of big ways of pruning: spur pruning and cane pruning. Cane pruning is similar. You're keeping last year's wood, but you're keeping longer sections of it. You may keep a 3-foot section, and you just tie it to the wire. Then there are a number of different ways that you can trellis your wires. We use a couple of different methods, but primarily we use high wire cordon, which means the cordons, the left and the right arms are attached to the highest wire in the vineyard, and then the shoots will kind of cascade downward as they grow through the season. And there'll be other slides here that might show that a little better. So that was now, and now we fast forward till We get bud break about the first or the second week of May. Grapes don't break bud until fairly late, and it's a good thing because as soon as the green growth comes out on those vines, it's very susceptible to a frost. So if you have very warm weather in the spring, you'll get bud break a little too early. Then a frost comes along, say in April sometime, if you've gotten an early bud break, and then you get a late frost, you can wipe out your fruit production for the year. You won't kill the vine, but that fruit crop is very susceptible to loss. And once you get bud break, the shoots start growing very quickly. Oops, let's go back here. The one on the left is probably sometime in late May, and then the slide on the right, that's probably mid-June. So you've grown an awful lot of growth between mid-May and mid-June, and then we're going to grow a little bit faster from that point on. So from mid-June to mid-July, you'll grow probably 3 or 4 foot long shoots in a month's time. I thought I had something a little bit earlier than that. No. Well, yeah, okay. You'll see some of the vines further on down, but this is, so we fast forwarded now a little bit later. We've gone past, this is about September when we start getting ripening of the fruit. You'll see this fruit develops all through the summer. It starts off as these little green berries. And then eventually at the end of August or so, we'll start getting a little bit of color on the red varieties. And then we'll start getting the white varieties. We'll start getting a little more translucent, and they'll move along and get ripe pretty quickly. Let's see, what have I got here? So let me see what I can show you on this one. So this is harvest time in the vineyard. And oops, sorry. Yeah, let me jump to this one. This is as we start developing sugars in the fruit along about September, it's starting to get to the winemaking time, and we'll start testing sugars to see if the grapes are ripening. We'll taste a lot of grapes. We want to look for a balance of sugars and acids. As the grapes ripen, the sugar level goes up and the acid levels will come down. And you're looking for a nice balance in between. In warmer climates, they have to make sure that there are enough acids stay in the wine. In northern climates, we're always looking to try to bring those acids down a lot further. As the sugars come up, the acids will come down, and we're looking for a balance in between, but we also need enough sugar in the wine, in the grapes, to make the alcohol in the wine that we're looking for. So we'll start checking. This is a refractometer, and this is what checks the sugar level in the grapes. We'll take a nice sample throughout the vineyard. We'll pick probably 100 berries down a row just to get a good sampling. And then we'll mix all those grapes up, get a drop of juice. We'll put it on the refractometer, and if you see the scale on the right, that tells you the degrees Brix is the measurement of sugar in the grapes, and it's roughly the percentage sugar in the grapes. So you can see on the scale that one was at 19 degrees Brix at the time we were looking at it. Grapes, different varieties of grapes ripen at a different sugar level. You'll get some that are ripe down around 15 or 16 Brix. Others will be ripe up around 25 Brix. A lot of it's dependent on flavor. And some grapes just are ripe at a lower sugar level. But when you're going to take them to the winery, you need enough sugar to make the alcohol in the wine that you're making. And if you're wondering how much sugar, if you're wondering how much alcohol this wine will make, you take the number of degrees Brix times 55% will tell you what alcohol level that wine will be if it's fermented all the way to dryness. And generally that's what we do. So if you have a wine, a real easy example is if it's 20 degrees Brix, you times 55%, it will be 11% alcohol when it's done. So in Maine, we're allowed to add sugar. Some states control what you can add to build the sugar levels up in your wine. You need to add concentrated grape juice instead of cane sugar. We can add sugar, and we will on occasion. Our grapes get very ripe here, so we have many years that we don't have to add much sugar at all. But like I said, some varieties ripen at a lower sugar level anyway. But what we're looking to make wines anywhere somewhere around the 12 to 13% alcohol level. So which means we want to start with, in most cases, juice that's around 22 to 23 Brix, somewhere around there. And but that depends on which kind of wine, what wines we're making.
Elmer, I do have a question in the chat that pertains to your previous comment about weather effects. So Angie is asking, if you lose your crop to a negative event, are the grape plants gone forever, or can they come back the following year?
They'll come back. They'll actually come. It depends on when that event happens. If it's because of extreme cold this time of year, those effects will last longer. We've had one season where we grow a lot of Cayuga grape, and that's right on the edge as far as what we can do in this climate. We had one winter that it was really very, very cold and I forget what year it was, very cold and not a lot of snow cover. We had a lot of winter kill, some of the trunks died back. And in the extreme event could kill the vine and it not come back. But in most cases, the vine will even survive that. What you need to do, everything above ground might be killed off, but what you'll do is throughout the summer, sucker shoots grow up alongside the trunk all the time. Normally you will break those off because you want to keep that framework that we showed in the previous slide to keep the grapes trellised correctly. But if you want to replace that trunk, if the trunk has died or if the trunk is just getting elderly and you want to replace it, you can keep one of those sucker shoots. We usually use the existing trunk and we'll train that sucker shoot right up the trunk. Even if the trunk is dead, it's a nice support for it. And then you just retrain it onto the wire, and it'll take a couple of years, but you can bring your vine back. That's pretty much the worst case scenario. In most cases, if your negative temperature event is in the springtime, what you're doing is you're just knocking off if you get bud break and you've got a shoot of green tissue growing up, you can freeze that off. And the grapes have a 3-bud system, and you'll get the primary bud is the one that will produce the most fruit. If that gets frozen off, you'll have the secondary shoot come. That shoot will still have some fruit, but not as much as the primary. But you can still salvage a crop. If that shoot gets frozen off, you'll still have a tertiary shoot that will come up. It will support your vine, but you pretty much won't have any fruit for the year. So it's not a good scenario, but they can survive some cold. Let me see. That was the harvest. This is when we harvest, and you can see the vines from in the springtime to now. the shoots grow at a remarkable rate. They grow in the really growthy time of year. They grow an inch or more per day. They grow really, really fast. So they'll fill out the trellis, and then, and this is just a picture at harvest time, and we have some really productive vines. Each one of those totes is about 30 pounds of grapes. This particular variety is St. Croix, I believe it is. And if it is, that's gotten our yield record. One year we averaged over 22 pounds per vine on St. Croix. Typically a good average for our vineyard is somewhere around 8 pounds per vine. Just about, because we have about 2,000 vines altogether on about 3.5 acres. So we've got 10 different varieties, 6 whites, 4 reds, no, 4 whites, 6 reds. And we average somewhere around anywhere from 12 to 20,000 pounds per year of grapes. So, and typically right around 15 or 16,000 pounds, which in the big scheme of things is very, very small. But by Maine standards, we're about a medium-sized winery, but we're one of few that really grow the primary portion of our fruit for our wines. We are almost entire. We're about 90% from our own fruit. We do bring in, each year we'll bring in just a few barrels of juice just as a supplement or to add a little bit more to the flavor profiles of our wines. But our mission has always been to have a winery to support the farm and preserving the farm. That's just the way we've operated for 20 years. It's the primary purpose is to be a farm. And so we never looked to import a lot of grapes and grow super big. We just wanted to, keep it small and keep it local. Yeah. This is crushing. This is the first step in the winemaking process. This is after we've gotten all those tubs collected of grapes. We bring them into the winery, and then we start crushing. Anybody that's been here has seen our winery is tiny. We produce somewhere around, we would produce about 1,500 cases a year usually. And we do it all in about 400 square feet. So it's very crowded. We do our crushing and pressing outside, right in front of the winery. So in the fall, people see us working all the time. So on the right is our crusher destemmer. The grapes come in, you can see the grapes on the upper part being dumped into the hopper, and they travel down through some an auger that will feed it through a rotating drum that has holes in it. So it will pull the stems out to the right-hand side of the machine. The stems get pulled off from the grapes, and then they fall down through here is rollers that will crush the grapes. We're not looking to smash the crap out of them. We're looking to just break the skins to release the juice. And you can see our little setup over on the left-hand side. The crusher is over here. Typically, we crush them into a bin over here, like on the right, and then we'll use our pumps to pump the juice. It's called must at this point, which is it's the juice, the skins, the seeds, everything all together. And we'll pump them one of two places. We'll either pump them from the bin that will be under the crusher into the winery and into an open tank if it's a red. Our reds ferment on the skins, so they would go from this bin on the right, pumped into the winery, which is right here. Yeah, we'll go back here. And they'll ferment, and then The reds will then be pumped back out to go in the press. Whites, on the other hand, go through the crusher and then we'll go pump directly to the press. We press them off and get fresh juice and then pump that juice into the winery to be fermented. So the whites are crushed and pressed right away and we ferment the juice. The reds ferment on the skins. And once that fermentation is complete, goes through the press and then we'll go back into the winery. I'll get it right. You can see our spacious winery down here on the lower left. We've got a lot of tanks. We move them in and out. I like to say we're a model of inefficiency. We move things around 100 times before they actually go out the door, but it works. You can see some of the assortment of stainless tanks we have, and we have quite a selection of oak barrels. Up on the left is us filling. Holly's doing an OSHA-approved climb on top of barrels.
Climbing on top of barrels to get to the top so that I can fill up the top, the barrel up there.
And filling the barrels. We cut back on the number of barrels we've used because we're trying to maximize the wine production out of the space that we've got, and barrels are quite inefficient on the use of space. So we are using barrels for 1, 2, 3 of our wines now, and the I think 4. Oh yeah, that's right, 4 of them. A little bit fewer than we did in the past. And then the slide on the right shows a view from inside the winery out the door. You can see a little bit of the equipment we've got. A lot of our equipment is very oversized for the space we've got. When I grow up, I might have a bigger winery someday. This down here is our little small labeler. All our labels are applied by hand using this little roller. And on the right is our capsuling machine. It spins capsules onto the tops of our bottles.
Elmer, do you have time for 2 questions? Anita is asking, did the drought last summer hurt your grapes?
Yeah, you know, this past summer wasn't bad. The rain that we did get was well timed, and things worked out pretty well. Previous years, not so much. We've had a drought for 3 or 4 years now, and progressively it's getting worse. So actually last year's grapes, the quality was really good. The volume was down a little bit, but the quality was super. And it was dry, but there was sufficient rain. The last two summers before that were very dry, and it's taken their toll. So we need some rain.
Yeah. And thank you for that. And then Reverend Springer is asking, is there a use for the leftover grape material after crushing and pressing?
Yes, there's a number of different uses. For us, it's compost. We compost it, and then we try to routinely use it back in the vineyard. We did a good spreading on the rows last year. So yeah, we compost all of our leftover pumice and use it in the vineyard. There are other uses. You can actually re-ferment. You can sugar it up, add some water and re-ferment it, and you can actually make some decent wine out of it that way. Some wineries are doing that, getting creative with it now. We've kind of done it in the past for a little blending wine. Or then it can be distilled, and that would be grappa. But, and then they were somebody was using some of us, they've extracted, we've had people come and extract yeast from that as well. No more questions, or is that it for
There
now?
is another one that just came
Oh.
in.
Oh, yeah, might as well do it.
All right. Angie's saying, what do you mean by the quality was super? What makes a wine a good quality?
The grapes, well, it all starts with the grapes, and the grapes to be good quality, first of all, fully ripe. Hopefully your sugar levels get up to where you want them. I would say the sugar is probably that's the one thing that most people measure the most, is the sugar level. That's how they'll go out and try to see if their grapes are ripe. To me, that's really the least important, because Domino makes it all the time. You can throw it in if you need it. First of all, we look for flavor. We're eating a lot of grapes that time, and the weird thing is with red grapes, you're making the red wine from the grapes and the seeds and the skins and everything. Chomp them right down with the seeds and all, and it really gives you more of the sense of what that grape is doing. So you're looking for flavor, number one. Flavor is the thing you can, sugar, you can add sugar. Acid's the other thing we measure, and we're looking for the acids to come down to a nice workable level. And sometimes that's a challenge. That you can manipulate in the winery a little bit, but we want it to come to a workable level. The thing that you can never change in the winery is the flavor. So that's primarily we look for the flavor profile that we want. And we've come to really pick most based on flavor, with acids being second and sugar being the last thing we worry about. Okay, hope that answers that one.
Great, thank you.
Sure. This is just an example of some of our wines that we do. We do 17 different wines now. We've got a couple that were retired. We have a core of 10 or 12, and then a few of them are very small runs that we are in and out of all the time. This is just shows in the middle, the slide up here, the 4 blueberry wines that we have. We have our blueberry pie, which is, we've had that from the beginning. That's our blueberry dessert wine. We have our Blue Moon, which is our dry blueberry. Excuse me. We have Wild Child, which is incredibly successful. That's our latest blueberry wine. That's incredibly successful. And then we have Vineyard Blues, which is a blueberry grape blend. We entered competitions. We've done pretty well in competitions. We don't enter as many of them as we used to. They're fairly expensive to enter, and it's every once in a while it's good validation. We've won some pretty good ones. Was that?
Yeah, we have the double gold.
Yeah. Right up here. Nor'easter.
Those 3 were at the wine competition, so we got gold, double gold, and so it was. We did really well that year with our reds in the different wine competition. I think that's just one competition there. We had another one we entered that Barn Red did really well, was named Maine's best. So.
New England.
Oh,
New England's best.
Yeah.
Best red in New England was Barn Red, and then we got double gold with Nor'easter. So we've had decent success with our competitions. It's always good. It's a little overrated, but but it's good good validation to make sure you're doing things right.
While we're right here, Elmer,
Yes.
just a question. What is the ratio of blueberries to your grapes in your blueberry wine?
All of them are 100% blueberry with the exception of the Vineyard Blues. Vineyard Blues is about 80% white grape and 20% blueberry. All the other blueberry wines are 100% wild blueberry.
15 of our wines are grape wines, whereas just the 4 are the blueberry wines.
Yeah.
I don't know which angle they were asking.
Okay.
Thank you.
So we've grown over the years. We've kind of been of the low growth kind of thing. We're sustainable, try to do sustainable business practices. And we've added a few things along the way. Always try to keep growing, keep improving the farm. That's just been the way we wanted to do it. In 2000, we started the winery with this little red building as our tasting room. I guess you see where it was right out there. It was right next to the road. We actually started first year, we were actually in the winery on top of a barrel doing tastings. Then the second year through 2015, most of 2015, we were in this little red tasting room right next to the road on Barrett Hill. Then in 2015, we built this post and beam frame tasting room. And indoor bathrooms were a great advancement. And we opened that in the fall of 2015. So that's what we did that year. We tried to do something every year. In what year? 17, fall of 17, we added the solar array to the top of our barn. It's about 35 kilowatts, and it produces all of our electricity for the business and the house, just about 100%. Actually, we're a little over. We don't want to give anything free back to CMP, so we're using all the electricity we can this year. Because of last summer, not having things going on, we were a little light on electric usage last summer, so we had a big bank. The way that the net metering works, we build up a bank of kilowatt hours through the summer when we're producing more than we're using, and then going into the winter through the darker months, you eat away at your bank. We do the majority of our heating. We've got 4 heat pumps and some other electric heat, and plus we have all of our freezers, our pumps. We used to have a very sizable electric bill, and now we don't. So that was really fun. That's something that we've always wanted to do. We've gone into this with a plan. We had a good business plan, and a lot of it had to do with just the way we wanted to do things too. We're two control freaks. And then from 2016, in 2016, we started our first concert events. It was always in the back of our minds that we wanted to do this. Like I said, we had a business plan. This was in phase, I don't know, 10 or so of the business plan, but it was there, it was in the back of the head. And then
we were doing free concerts.
We were doing a lot of free concerts.
Up until then, so.
Yeah.
I mean, we had even such as not only Don Campbell, the local artist, we also had Jonathan Edwards and Sean Mullins, and those were all free concerts too.
We did a lot of in James McMurtry, we did a couple of years for free. And then in 2016, we decided to up that game a little bit, and we kind of got a little out of control. So this is what we've done the last few years, is we put on concerts. May not be the world's smartest business move, but it's a lot of fun, and it's brought us a lot of notoriety, and
fun for the community, I think.
Yeah.
Everybody gets involved.
Yeah, and everybody hears it. It's sometimes a little loud, but it's what it is. But it's been a lot.
I think that one's like Melissa Etheridge in the top left,
Yeah.
the bottom right. Is that record company or?
I don't know.
Yeah,
I think
sorry.
it was Brian Setzer.
Brian Setzer.
We've had a lot. It's kind of fun listening to the radio, and we call them Savage Oaks alumni when we hear them on the radio. So I have always been a big part, and actually founding members of the Maine Winery Guild. When we started, there were about 6, maybe like 5 or 6 wineries in the state. Our license number was number 12, but there were a few that had gone by the wayside at that time. I think when we started, there were about 6 or 7 wineries in the state, and that was back in 2005. Since that time, now we're up to, it's hard to say, probably 35 or 40 on paper in the state right now. There's some that are just cideries. Cideries are considered wineries, so that skews it a little bit. But there's a lot more than there used to be, and there are 24 members of the Maine Winery Guild. And in 2007, there were probably about a half a dozen wineries got together and formed the guild. And since that time, it's grown to about 24 members. We're all across the state, all the way from Lebanon on the New Hampshire border, all the way to Cherryfield, and now all the way up to by Holton. So it's pretty widespread, and there's all sorts of wineries out there for people to visit. We have real small, tiny ones, and you got big ones like Cellar Doors, very big, and we're middle of the road. But like I said, our specialty has been growing the fruit. A number of the bigger wineries in Maine bring in the majority of their fruit just because there's not that many grapes growing in Maine. They're pretty limited. So if anyone's growing them, for the most part, they're using them. And that's like with us, we're about mid-size, but we're producing them mostly from what we grow. Anything more about the guild?
No.
And this is what we did this past summer. This was a little bit different. We moved to the outside like everybody. We're still not allowed inside. So we adapted last year by bringing everything outside. We're very fortunate because we do a lot of events, we do weddings, we do a lot of that kind of thing. So we had a lot of tents, we have tables. So we were very fortunate that way. It was an easy move for us to just go outside. And we were very happy. We attracted quite a few people. Of course, we didn't have any of our events, so that was a big blow. But as far as people coming, we were only open 3 days a week as opposed to 7 usually. But we were really well supported, and we were really happy, and it worked out. And actually, the outside, that's one thing that we'll keep, is the outdoor tasting area. As long as the weather's good, it's really popular. So we're gonna keep doing that. So that's a rush through, and we can always go back. There's some questions. I'd be happy to go back and go over some parts of that. We skimmed through grape growing.
This has been so informative, and I'm sorry I missed any of those concerts. Whoa, those look like big time. I have a question for you, while other people may be putting questions in the chat, or welcome to unmute. Did you teach yourselves? Like, how did you start off?
Like I said earlier, my degree is in agriculture. So growing the grapes, even though they're not grown, there's not many grown around here, and there are not a lot of resources. You can't, in other states with more developed industries, there are a lot of resources to learn. We don't have those. So, but I was pretty sure we could grow grapes. We've got, like I said in the beginning, we've got a really nice site. It's on a nice south-facing slope. Once I started exploring it, I realized that our site was about as good as you can get in Maine. So I was pretty comfortable in the grape growing part. Once we started growing grapes, we figured we better learn how to make wine. So I traveled to a lot of trade shows around the country, went out to UC Davis for a couple of short courses, bought some juice, just trial and error, and we were always, I like to say, we're a farm first, winery second. A lot of wineries would open up, bring in all their fruit and start production right away. We didn't do that. We spent the time, once we put the grapes in the ground, we had that. You don't start getting grapes for about 4 years. Usually your first crop right around on the 4th year. So it's some time. So we had that time in between to learn the process and then and then we opened after that. So we used that time to learn. And then Holly, I manage the vineyard and the wine production. Holly does the marketing and the tasting room. So
And
Website.
post beautiful Instagram photos.
yeah, she does all that.
Yeah, yeah, and I taught myself code, HTML, learned to do website, learn the graphic design things, and just kind of trial and error, and just did it, design the labels and yeah.
Like I said, we're control freaks. We've done, yeah, we've done this kind of our way. Everything we've done, we've done it the way we wanted to do it.
Good for you. All right, we have some chat questions.
Yep.
There are 3 from Reverend Springer. I'll start with the first one. I think you just touched on it. What northwest, east, south slope orientation is best for grapes?
Yep. Good question. South, east, southeast, southwest. Definitely ought to have some south in there. Slope is good for drainage, for air drainage. So a little bit of slope is good. Level's not bad, but a little bit of slope is good but you definitely need to get all that sun. In this kind of climate, you need to get all that sunlight you can. So you want it. And then there's always the debate which way your rows should orient, north, south, east, west, whether you want your sun going down the row or across the row. With my terrain, I really didn't have much choice. My rows are oriented east-west, so I'm getting the southern sun across the length of the rows. So it works well for us.
Okay. And what pests and critters are a problem in Union, and how do you manage them?
Turkeys, bad. The most unmanageable one. Turkeys are bad. We thought we would have trouble with deer when we started. Really hasn't worked out that way. We've had a few coyotes around there to keep the deer away. So deer haven't really been much of a problem, but turkeys really are. And turkeys, ripe grapes, that's what they eat. They when they show up and start eating grapes, and they eat a lot of them. We can scare them away. We have a noise cannon. We have a couple of devices called Bird Guard. Works really well on small birds. That's another predator, but birds in general. But turkeys, there's not a lot to scare them away. We're allowed to shoot some, but it really doesn't scare them away for long. Small birds are another issue, but we have the device called Bird Guard, plays bird predator noises, plays distressed birds of the species you're looking to get rid of, plus a lot of predator bird noises. If you come by here at harvest time, you'll hear them. And that works really, really well. And other than those kind of pests, fungal diseases, grapes are temperamental. They're relatively difficult to grow. Fungal diseases are a big issue. And then as far as pests go, Japanese beetles. They've been bad. I'm of the opinion they're kind of on the downhill slide. They're going the other direction now. We've had a couple of years now that haven't been that bad. We're not organic, but we try to be as close as we can. The grapes are very temperamental. You can grow them organically. In my opinion, sooner or later, you're going to run into a crop failure. And if you can bear a crop failure every once in a while, it's great. We are pretty tame with our spray schedule, and we use organic where we can, but we do sometimes have to go further. And in Japanese beetles, fortunately, the last couple of years, we've not had to treat for them.
All right, we have time for a few more here. This one is the last one from Reverend Springer. Are there heirloom table grapes you'd recommend for someone growing grapes for table use farmers markets?
Yeah, absolutely. That's a very untapped. I think that I'm really excited about that. I think there is a good potential. Stop by and see me sometime. I'll give you some resources to check out varieties. We grow Canadice. Canadice is a really nice one. We grow a little bit of that. There's Concord has always been a favorite. You can grow that. Yeah, but that's a wine grape, St. Pepin, but it's a dual purpose. But it makes a really nice table grape. I like Canadice. I'd have to look at a few more charts. The Canadice works really well here.
Canadice also are wonderful.
Raisins, yeah, we dried a bunch of raisins and they're awesome. So, and they're seedless. A good resource, AA Vineyards in New York. They have a great website catalog, and they tell you all the good varieties and the hardiness charts. But can't think of any other right off. I should be able to tell you a bunch of them. But like I say, AA Vineyards, great resource.
All right, Tim and Laurie want to know if you've considered irrigation.
We did, yes, and just so that with the dry, we have a well at the top of our vineyard, and we have some solar panels up there that we pump water into a tank. We now cultivate our rows with a device called a weed badger, so we're actually cultivating down the rows of grapes now. We used to have our drip irrigation lines on the ground, so we had to pull them up. This was before we started getting some years of drought. We probably are going to have to put those back out, and we've gone several years without it. We do have it accessible, but yeah, it's probably coming to that point where we ought to do that again. It was good. It was good when they were young vines. We used it to establish the vineyard and then we pulled them up, but it's probably time to put them out again.
Okay, and Michelle would like to know, do you have people who work with you to manage the winery, or is it just the two of you?
We are the two full-time year-round people. But then in the summer, we have, well, last year we didn't have too many, but we have one full-time guy that does grounds and vineyard work. It's basically the vineyard is probably a one-person job through the summer, pretty doable with one person. He does vineyard work and grounds, and then we have tasting room. We have 2 or 3, and then we have some kind of versatile people. Usually have 4 or 5 seasonal help.
Okay, and Reverend Springer wants to let you know that she will be there in late May and will come by the farm, and she
Absolutely.
volunteered at a couple of other concerts. So there you have it.
And
we are at,
we hope to get concerts again someday.
yes. We are at 7 o'clock, but I just wanted to give anybody an opportunity that didn't write in the chat, if you wanted to unmute and ask Elmer and Holly a question before we end today.
I can ask a question, Deborah.
Yes.
No one else. First up, I was amazed to see how hands-on you are with everything, between the pruning and the harvesting of the grapes. I don't know how you guys do it. I'm amazed. Good for you. And I'm really surprised to hear that the Japanese beetles haven't been a problem, because I just think they're horrendous. Yeah. Good.
But very this whole business is here, and we kind of knew it going in, but it's even probably more than what we expected. It's pretty well known that it's not for the faint of heart, this business.
Yeah, well, good work.
Thank you.
Thank you.
All right, everybody. I just want to thank Holly and Elmer. This has been a really informative session tonight, and
Thank you.
I am really pleased that so many of us are here to support you. So that concludes our presentation for this evening, and all of us at Vose Library thank you for attending our Zoom with Vose Wednesday series, and we hope that you'll help spread the word and also join us on Wednesday, March 10th at 6 p.m. I will be discussing the Vose Library website, because we're interested in your ideas on how to make our website a wicked good place to visit. So thank you, everybody. Good night, be well, and stay healthy.
Thank you. Thank you for watching.
Thank you.
Thank you.